I am about to reveal the single most powerful meal for actually reversing arterial plaque buildup, not managing it, not slowing progression, reversing it completely. And I have the clinical evidence to prove every word. Hi, I'm Dr. Megan Foster, board certified cardiac surgeon with 2 decades of experience. For 24 years, I've performed countless surgeries, held diseased vessels in my hands, and witnessed firsthand what atherosclerosis does to human arteries. I've seen arteries so calcified they've literally transformed into rigid pipes. I've extracted plaque deposits that turned living tissue into concrete. And I'm here to tell you something critical. Virtually everything you've been taught about clearing your arteries is fundamentally wrong. The internet overflows with dangerous misinformation: lemon water to dissolve blockages, apple cider vinegar to scrub vessel walls clean, garlic supplements to magically melt away cholesterol deposits. It's all complete nonsense. Your cardiovascular system is not plumbing. Arterial plaque is not cooking grease coating your pipes. You cannot pour some miracle solution down your throat and expect it to flush everything clean. The human body doesn't work that way. I know this because I've spent 20 years studying the actual pathology. When I perform coronary bypass surgery, when I cut into an artery that's 90% occluded, I witness the real biology happening inside. I see what actually causes disease at the cellular level. And here's what most people don't understand. Plaque is not simply cholesterol stuck to your vessel walls like bacon grease in a drain. Plaque represents an inflammatory immune response. It's your white blood cells mounting an attack against oxidized cholesterol molecules trapped within your arterial walls. It's essentially an autoimmune war occurring inside your cardiovascular system right now. If you want to reverse this process, you must understand the underlying mechanisms. Because once you comprehend what plaque actually is, how it develops, and why it progresses, you'll realize that the meal I'm about to describe isn't some alternative medicine fantasy. It's a precisely targeted molecular intervention. Every single ingredient activates a specific biological pathway. Every compound triggers a particular cellular response. This meal doesn't cleanse your arteries through some mystical process. It activates reverse cholesterol transport. It forces foam cells to release the cholesterol they've engulfed. It prevents calcium crystallization from transforming your vessels into bone. It stops LDL particles from oxidizing in the first place. This is cellular biology. This is immunology. This is cardiovascular physiology. This is how you actually reverse atherosclerotic disease. Not with cleanses, not with detoxes, with hard science. Stay with me because by the end of this presentation, you'll understand exactly what's happening inside your arteries at this very moment. You'll comprehend why conventional dietary advice fails, why low-fat diets accelerate disease progression, why statin therapy alone proves insufficient, and you'll learn the precise meal, the exact ingredients, the specific bioactive compounds that activate the pathways your body needs to extract cholesterol from your arterial walls and reverse this disease. This is not speculation. This is not a trend. This is peer-reviewed, published science, and it works consistently. But first, you need to understand what arterial plaque actually is at the molecular level, because if you don't understand the disease mechanism, you cannot effectively fight it. Your arterial wall contains 3 distinct layers. The innermost layer is the intima. It consists of a single layer of endothelial cells that form a protective barrier between your blood and the deeper vessel structures. When these endothelial cells function properly, they're smooth and non-adhesive. They produce nitric oxide, a gaseous signaling molecule that maintains vessel dilation and prevents blood cells from adhering to the vessel wall. But when these cells become damaged through chronic hypertension, tobacco use, diabetes, or systemic inflammation, they become dysfunctional. They stop producing adequate nitric oxide. They become adhesive. They develop gaps in their protective barrier. And through those microscopic gaps, LDL cholesterol particles infiltrate the vessel wall. This marks the first critical step in plaque formation. LDL crosses the endothelial barrier and becomes trapped in the intima layer. Now, here's the crucial mechanism. If that LDL simply remained there unchanged, it wouldn't cause problems. But it doesn't remain unchanged. It undergoes oxidation. Think of oxidation like metal rusting. Your LDL particle becomes exposed to free radicals within the vessel wall microenvironment. The lipids in the LDL become rancid. The protein components become damaged. The particle transforms into oxidized LDL. And oxidized LDL triggers your immune system like an alarm. Your body recognizes it as a pathogen, a foreign invader that must be eliminated. So your immune system deploys its defenders. White blood cells called monocytes penetrate the vessel wall. They squeeze through the endothelium. They differentiate into macrophages, the specialized garbage collectors of your immune system designed to engulf and eliminate foreign material. These macrophages detect the oxidized LDL. They identify it as dangerous, and they consume it through a process called phagocytosis. The macrophage's cell membrane extends around the LDL particle and internalizes it. The particle gets broken down in a specialized compartment called a lysosome. The cholesterol gets extracted, and this is where the pathological cascade begins. The macrophage cannot efficiently process the massive cholesterol load. It becomes overwhelmed. It becomes engorged with lipid molecules. It swells dramatically. It transforms into what we call a foam cell, a lipid-laden immune cell that appears foamy under microscopic examination. And foam cells form the foundation of atherosclerotic plaque. They're the first visible manifestation of arterial disease. When pathologists perform autopsies on teenagers who died in accidents, they frequently discover fatty streaks in their arteries, yellowish lines running along the vessel wall. Those are foam cell accumulations, millions of them clustered together. The disease process has already initiated. And here's the tragedy. Those foam cells are attempting to help you. They're trying to clear the oxidized LDL. They're trying to protect your tissues. But they become trapped. They cannot exit the vessel wall. They cannot transport the cholesterol back into circulation. So they simply remain there, bloated, dysfunctional, dying. And when they die, they rupture. They spill their contents into the vessel wall, cholesterol crystals, inflammatory cytokines, destructive enzymes. This debris triggers additional inflammation. More immune cells get recruited. More macrophages infiltrate. More foam cells form. The plaque expands. And over years, over decades, this process continues relentlessly. The plaque grows outward. It protrudes into the arterial lumen. It narrows the channel where blood flows. You develop symptoms, chest pain, shortness of breath, leg cramping during exertion. But the real danger isn't the gradual narrowing, it's the acute rupture. Because plaque isn't stable. It's not a solid cholesterol lump. It's a dynamic, inflamed lesion with a thin, fibrous cap covering a core filled with dead foam cells and cholesterol debris. That cap is fragile, and when it ruptures, the contents spill into the bloodstream. Your blood becomes exposed to tissue factor, a powerful coagulation signal. A blood clot forms instantly. It occludes the artery. Blood flow stops. If this occurs in your heart, you suffer a myocardial infarction. If it occurs in your brain, you experience a stroke. If it occurs in your leg, you develop gangrene. This is how plaque kills, not by slowly narrowing the artery until it completely closes, but by rupturing suddenly and triggering catastrophic thrombosis. And here's what's truly insane. The plaques that rupture aren't always the largest ones. Sometimes a plaque that's only 40% or 50% occlusive, a plaque that wouldn't even produce symptoms, ruptures and kills you instantly. Because it's not the size that determines risk. It's the composition. It's the degree of inflammation, the number of dying foam cells inside, the thickness of the fibrous cap. This is why the conventional approach fails completely. Cardiologists focus obsessively on narrowing. They perform stress tests. They perform angiograms. They measure stenosis percentages. If it's blocked more than 70%, they place a stent. They mechanically open it up. Problem solved. Except the problem isn't solved at all because the plaque remains there, inflamed, unstable, ready to rupture at any moment. The stent prevents symptoms temporarily, but it doesn't reverse the underlying disease process. And the plaques that aren't stented, the ones that are only 30% or 40% occlusive, those are the silent killers. Because nobody's treating them. Nobody's reversing them. They're just sitting there, growing, inflaming, waiting to rupture without warning. This is why we desperately need a different paradigm. We don't need to mechanically widen arteries. We need to stabilize existing plaque. Better yet, we need to reverse it completely. We need to extract the cholesterol from the foam cells, from the vessel wall, back into the bloodstream where it can be transported to the liver and permanently excreted. This biological process exists. It's called reverse cholesterol transport, and it's the only proven method to actually reverse atherosclerotic plaque. Your body possesses an elegant mechanism for this. HDL cholesterol, high density lipoprotein. You've heard it called good cholesterol, and it truly is beneficial, but not because it's a different type of cholesterol molecule. HDL is beneficial because it functions as a transport vehicle. Its biological purpose is to collect cholesterol from peripheral tissues and return it to the liver for elimination. When an HDL particle encounters a foam cell, it docks on the cell surface. It activates a protein called ABCA1, ATP binding cassette transporter, A1. This protein functions like an ejection mechanism. It actively pumps cholesterol out of the foam cell and loads it onto the HDL particle. The HDL carries that cholesterol away, back to the liver. The liver excretes it into bile. The bile enters your intestinal tract. The cholesterol exits your body permanently. The foam cell shrinks. The plaque regresses. The disease reverses. This is reverse cholesterol transport, and it's the only scientifically validated method to reverse atherosclerosis. But here's the critical problem. Most people's reverse cholesterol transport is completely broken. Their ABCA1 isn't activated. Their HDL isn't functional. Their foam cells cannot eject the cholesterol they've accumulated. So the plaque simply grows and grows and grows until it ruptures catastrophically, or until they end up on my operating table getting their sternum split open for emergency bypass surgery. But it absolutely doesn't have to be this way. Because ABCA1 can be activated, HDL function can be restored, reverse cholesterol transport can be initiated. Not with medication, not with surgery, with food. Specific foods containing specific bioactive compounds consumed in a specific combination. This is the meal I'm about to describe in detail. And before you dismiss this as wishful thinking, understand that this is rigorously peer-reviewed science. There are published human clinical trials demonstrating that specific dietary interventions activate ABCA1, increase reverse cholesterol transport, and reduce measurable plaque burden. I'm going to cite those studies, I'm going to explain the mechanisms thoroughly, and then I'm going to give you the exact meal protocol. But you need to understand one more critical mechanism before we discuss the food. You need to understand arterial calcification, because cholesterol isn't the only pathological component in diseased arteries. Calcium deposition is arguably worse. As plaque matures, as foam cells die and release their toxic contents, calcium deposits begin forming. Your body attempts to wall off the inflammation. It deposits calcium like scar tissue, like a protective scab. Over time, the plaque becomes increasingly calcified, hard, rigid, brittle. Your arteries literally transform into bone tissue. We measure this with a coronary artery calcium score, a CT scan that quantifies the amount of calcium deposited in your coronary arteries. A score of 0 means no detectable plaque. A score of 100 to 400 indicates moderate disease. A score above 400 indicates severe disease. And a score exceeding 1,000 means you're a walking time bomb. Your arteries have become concrete. Let me tell you about Thomas. He was 68 years old. He felt completely fine. No symptoms whatsoever. But his physician ordered a coronary calcium score as part of routine screening. The result came back 836, severe disease. His cardiologist was shocked. How could someone with a score that high remain completely asymptomatic? They performed an angiogram. His left anterior descending artery was 60% blocked. His right coronary artery was 50% blocked. Not severe enough to warrant stenting according to guidelines, but severe enough to kill him if either of those plaques ruptured unexpectedly. His cardiologist prescribed atorvastatin 80 milliliters, told him to follow a strict low-fat diet, told him to exercise regularly, standard conventional advice. Thomas did everything correctly. He took his statin every single day without fail. He eliminated red meat completely. He ate exclusively chicken breast and fish. He walked every morning for 30 minutes. 1 year later, they repeated his calcium score, 981. It had increased by 145 points. The plaque was growing, calcifying. Despite the high dose statin therapy, despite the low fat diet, despite the regular exercise, Thomas was devastated. He thought he was doing everything right, but he was getting progressively worse. He came to me asking if he needed bypass surgery. I reviewed his angiogram carefully. The blockages weren't severe enough to justify surgical intervention yet, but I told him the brutal truth. If he didn't reverse this process, if his plaque continued growing at this rate, he'd be dead within 5 years, either from a massive heart attack or on my operating table during emergency surgery. Thomas asked what he should do. I told him to immediately stop eating a low-fat diet. I told him the exact meal protocol I'm about to share with you. I explained the mechanisms in detail, the ABCA1 activation, the calcium inhibition, the oxidation prevention. Thomas was extremely skeptical. He said, "My cardiologist specifically told me to avoid fat. You're telling me to consume olive oil?" I said, "Your cardiologist is wrong. Low-fat diets don't reverse plaque. They accelerate progression because they lower your HDL, and without adequate HDL, you cannot activate reverse cholesterol transport. You cannot extract cholesterol from your arterial walls." Thomas trusted me. He completely changed his dietary approach. He consumed this exact meal every single day, not once weekly, not when convenient, every single day without exception. We repeated his calcium score 18 months later. 9922. It had decreased 59 points. The plaque was regressing. The calcium was being reabsorbed. His arteries were healing. Thomas is still alive today, 5 years later. His calcium score is now 841. Still elevated, but declining steadily. The disease is reversing. Slowly, but consistently reversing. And he will never need surgery. Because we caught it. We activated the biological mechanisms his body needed to heal itself. This is what I want for you. Now let's discuss the meal in detail. This is not a recipe. This is a therapeutic protocol. Every ingredient serves a specific biological purpose. Every compound activates a specific molecular pathway. You cannot substitute ingredients. You cannot skip components. You cannot do half of this protocol and expect results. This is all or nothing. You need arugula or beets, preferably both. Here's the scientific rationale. Your endothelium, the arterial lining, produces nitric oxide. This is arguably the most important molecule in cardiovascular health. Nitric oxide dilates your vessels. It prevents blood cells from adhering. It inhibits smooth muscle proliferation. It prevents plaque formation. But in atherosclerosis, nitric oxide production becomes severely impaired. Your endothelium is dysfunctional. It cannot synthesize adequate amounts. And without sufficient nitric oxide, your vessels constrict. Blood flow decreases. Plaque progression accelerates. Plaque. You can restore nitric oxide through a pathway called the enterosalivary nitrate-nitrite-nitric oxide pathway. This represents one of the most important discoveries in cardiovascular physiology in the past 2 decades, and virtually nobody knows about it. Here's the mechanism. You consume foods high in nitrate, leafy greens, arugula, spinach, beets. The nitrate gets absorbed in your small intestine. It enters your bloodstream. Your salivary glands actively concentrate it. Approximately 25% of circulating nitrate gets secreted into your saliva. You swallow your saliva. It returns to your mouth. And here's the critical step. Your mouth contains beneficial bacteria. Specific bacterial species on your tongue and gums possess an enzyme called nitrate reductase. This enzyme converts nitrate into nitrite. You swallow the nitrite. It enters your stomach. Your gastric acid converts some of it into nitric oxide immediately. The remainder gets absorbed and circulates through your bloodstream. When it reaches your blood vessels, your endothelial cells convert it into nitric oxide. Your vessels dilate. Blood flow increases dramatically. Endothelial function becomes restored. This is not theoretical. This has been proven in rigorous human clinical trials. Researchers administered beetroot juice, which is extremely high in nitrate, to participants. They measured endothelial function before and after consumption. Endothelial function improved dramatically within hours. Blood pressure dropped significantly. Arterial stiffness decreased. Blood flow increased. all from dietary nitrate. But here's the absolutely critical point. This pathway only functions if you maintain the beneficial bacteria. If you kill those bacteria, the entire pathway stops working. And how do you kill oral bacteria? Antiseptic mouthwash, chlorhexidine, Listerine. These products kill bacteria indiscriminately. That's their intended purpose, but they kill the beneficial bacteria too, the specific bacteria that convert nitrate to nitrite. If you use mouthwash regularly, you completely destroy the enterosalivary pathway. Your body cannot produce nitric oxide from dietary nitrate. Studies have definitively proven this. Researchers had participants use mouthwash twice daily for 1 week. Then they administered beetroot juice. They measured nitric oxide production. It was completely abolished. Blood pressure increased. Endothelial function worsened dramatically, all because the beneficial bacteria were eliminated. So if you want this protocol to work, if you want to restore nitric oxide production, you must stop using mouthwash immediately. Just brush your teeth thoroughly, floss regularly, that's sufficient. Don't kill the bacteria that are literally keeping your arteries alive. Now, how much nitrate do you need? Clinical studies demonstrate that 300 to 500 milliliters of nitrate per day is optimal. That's approximately 2 cups of arugula, or 1 large beet, or 1 cup of beetroot juice. I prefer arugula because it's easier to incorporate into a complete meal. You're going to use it as the foundation. A large salad, 2 to 3 cups of arugula, raw, not cooked. Cooking destroys significant amounts of the nitrate. Eat it raw. Your salivary glands will concentrate the nitrate, the bacteria will convert it. Nitric oxide will flood your vascular system. Your vessels will dilate. Blood flow to your heart will increase. Endothelial function will improve. Within hours, you'll notice it. Your hands and feet will feel warmer. Your blood pressure will drop slightly. Your exercise tolerance will improve noticeably. This is the first step. You've opened the vascular road. But opening the road isn't sufficient. You need to mobilize the accumulated debris. You need to activate reverse cholesterol transport. You need to activate ABCA1. And for that, you need high phenolic extra virgin olive oil. Not just any olive oil. High phenolic. This distinction matters enormously. Olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal. This is a phenolic compound. It's what creates that characteristic peppery sensation. That burning sensation in the back of your throat when you swallow high-quality olive oil, that's oleocanthal. And oleocanthal is one of the most powerful compounds for cardiovascular health discovered. It accomplishes 2 critical functions. First, it's powerfully anti-inflammatory. Oleocanthal inhibits COX enzymes, the same enzymes inhibited by ibuprofen. It reduces inflammation in your vessel walls. It calms the immune response. It stabilizes unstable plaque. Second, and this is absolutely critical, oleocanthal upregulates ABCA1 expression. It activates the gene that produces this transporter. Your foam cells start expressing more ABCA1 on their surface. And more ABCA1 means more cholesterol ejection, more reverse cholesterol transport, more plaque regression. This has been proven in cell culture studies. Researchers took foam cells, macrophages that had engulfed oxidized LDL, and treated them with oleocanthal. ABCA1 expression increased dramatically. Cholesterol efflux increased. The foam cells physically shrank. The cholesterol was being actively extracted. And it's been validated in large-scale human trials. The pre-dimed trial. This was a massive study conducted in Spain. 7,000 participants at high cardiovascular risk. They were randomized into 3 groups. One group followed a conventional low-fat diet. One group followed a Mediterranean diet supplemented with nuts. One group followed a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil, 50 milliliters per day. That's approximately 4 tablespoons. The study ran for 5 years. At completion, they analyzed cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, cardiovascular death. The low-fat group had the highest event rate. The nut group had a lower rate. The olive oil group had the lowest rate by far. 30% reduction in cardiovascular events compared to the low-fat group. 30% reduction from olive oil consumption. But not just any olive oil. The olive oil they used was high in phenolic compounds, high in oleocanthal, because that's what authentic Spanish olive oil is. Fresh, cold-pressed, unfiltered. extremely high phenolic content. If you use cheap olive oil, refined, filtered, sitting on a shelf for months, you're not getting oleocanthal, you're just getting fat, plain fat. And fat alone doesn't activate ABCA1. You need the phenolic compounds. So when you purchase olive oil, look for these specific characteristics: extra virgin, cold pressed, single estate if possible, harvest date printed on the bottle, ideally within the past year, dark glass bottle to protect from light degradation, and perform the taste test. Pour a small amount into a cup, swallow it straight. It should burn the back of your throat intensely. Peppery, harsh, almost painful. That burn is oleocanthal. The stronger the burn, the higher the phenolic content. If it tastes smooth and mild, it's low in phenolics. Don't purchase it. Get the harsh stuff. The oil that makes you cough, that's what you need therapeutically. How much? The PRE Dimed study used 50 milliliters per day. That's 4 tablespoons. That's substantial. Most people cannot consume that much straight, so you incorporate it into your meal. You dress your arugula salad with it generously. 3 to 4 tablespoons minimum. Don't be conservative. This is medicine. You're not trying to restrict calories. You're trying to activate ABCA1. Pour it generously. Now you have nitrates to produce nitric oxide. You have oleocanthal to activate reverse cholesterol transport. But there's a third critical mechanism you must address: calcification. Because if your arteries are calcified, if calcium is being actively deposited into your vessel walls, nitric oxide and ABCA1 won't be sufficient. You need to stop the calcification process. Better yet, you need to reverse it. And for that, you need vitamin K2, not vitamin K1. K2 specifically. This distinction is critical. Vitamin K1 is involved in blood coagulation. You obtain it from green leafy vegetables. It's important, but it doesn't affect calcium metabolism. Vitamin K2 is completely different. It's involved in calcium regulation. Its biological purpose is to direct calcium to appropriate locations, into your bones, not into your arteries. K2 activates specific proteins that control calcium deposition. The most important one is called matrix GLA protein, or MGP. This protein is synthesized by the smooth muscle cells in your arterial walls. Its purpose is to inhibit calcification. It binds to calcium crystals and prevents their formation. It keeps your arteries soft, flexible, alive. But MGP only functions if it's activated, and it's activated exclusively by vitamin K2. Without adequate K2, MGP remains inactive. It cannot bind calcium effectively. Your arteries calcify progressively. They transform into bone, and once they're calcified, they're rigid. They cannot dilate properly. Blood flow becomes impaired. Plaque is more likely to rupture. You're at extremely high risk for heart attack and stroke. This is why calcium scores are such powerful predictors of cardiovascular events. They're not just measuring plaque burden. They're measuring how dysfunctional your calcium metabolism has become. High calcium score means inadequate K2, inactive MGP, uncontrolled calcification. And here's the problem. Most people are severely deficient in K2. Why? Because it's only found in specific foods. Fermented foods, aged cheeses, natto. Natto is a Japanese food made from fermented soybeans. It's slimy, it's pungent. Most Westerners find it disgusting, but it's the richest source of vitamin K2 on the planet. Specifically, menaquinone 7 or MK7, the most bioactive form of K2. Studies in Japan have demonstrated that people who consume natto regularly have significantly lower rates of cardiovascular disease, lower calcium scores, more flexible arteries. And when researchers administered MK7 supplements to participants, calcium scores stopped increasing. In some cases, they actually decreased. The calcium was being extracted from the arteries and redirected to the bones where it belongs. This is the only nutrient that has been demonstrated to reverse arterial calcification in humans. The only one, not vitamin D, not calcium supplements, not magnesium. K2, specifically MK7. Thomas, the patient I mentioned earlier with a calcium score of 836, consumed natto every single day, 50 grams. That's approximately 2 tablespoons. It provided about 200 micrograms of MK7, and his calcium score decreased from 981 to 841 over 3 years. That's genuine regression, that's reversal, and it's because of K2. Now, I understand that most people aren't going to consume natto. It's definitely an acquired taste. So, what are the alternatives? Aged cheeses, Gouda, Brie, Edam. These contain moderate amounts of K2, approximately 10 to 20 micrograms per ounce. You'd need to consume several ounces per day to achieve a therapeutic dose. That's substantial cheese consumption. The other option is supplementation. MK7 supplements are readily available. The dose used in clinical studies is 180 to 360 micrograms per day. This is extremely safe. K2 doesn't affect blood coagulation. It doesn't interfere with blood thinners like warfarin. It's one of the safest supplements you can take. But I prefer food sources when possible. So the third component of this meal is either natto if you can tolerate it, or aged Gouda cheese, approximately 3 ounces, or an MK7 supplement, 180 micrograms taken with the meal. This activates MGP. It stops calcium from depositing in your arteries. It begins extracting existing calcium deposits. Your vessels become more flexible. Your calcium score stabilizes or decreases. But calcium isn't the only threat. There's one more critical mechanism you must address: oxidation. Remember, plaque formation initiates when LDL crosses the endothelium and oxidizes. If you can prevent that oxidation, you can prevent the entire pathological cascade. No oxidized LDL means no macrophages consuming it, no foam cells forming, no plaque developing. So, how do you prevent LDL oxidation? Antioxidants. But not just any antioxidants, specific ones that bind directly to LDL particles and protect them. The most powerful are called punicolagens. These are polyphenols found in pomegranates, specifically in the seeds and the membrane surrounding the seeds. Punicolagens have a unique property. They bind directly to LDL particles. They coat them. They prevent free radicals from attacking the lipids and proteins in the LDL. The LDL cannot oxidize. And if it cannot oxidize, your immune system doesn't recognize it as foreign. Macrophages don't consume it. Foam cells don't form. Plaque doesn't develop. This has been validated in human clinical trials. Researchers administered pomegranate juice to participants for 1 year. They measured carotid intima media thickness, a measure of plaque burden in the carotid arteries. The thickness decreased. The plaque regressed. And when they investigated the mechanism, they discovered that LDL oxidation had decreased dramatically. The LDL particles were resistant to oxidation because they were coated with punicolagens. Pomegranate also accomplishes something else critically important. It increases paraoxinase activity. Paraoxinase is an enzyme that resides on HDL particles. Its function is to break down oxidized lipids. It cleans up oxidized LDL. It protects the vessel wall from oxidative damage. People with high paraoxinase activity have significantly lower rates of cardiovascular disease. And pomegranate increases paraoxinase expression. Your HDL becomes more protective, more functional, more efficient at reverse cholesterol transport. This is why pomegranate is the fourth component of this meal, but not pomegranate juice. Juice is excessively high in sugar. You want the whole fruit, specifically the arils, the seed sacs. They're crunchy, tart, delicious, and packed with punicolagens. 1 cup of pomegranate arils provides approximately 300 milligrams of punicolagens. That's a therapeutic dose. You add them to your arugula salad. They provide texture, flavor, vibrant color, and oxidation protection. Now let's assemble this completely. The complete meal. The arterial remodeling protocol. Start with a large bowl, 2 to 3 cups of fresh arugula. This provides your nitrates, 300 to 500 milligrams. Your salivary glands will concentrate them. The beneficial bacteria will convert them to nitrite. Nitric oxide will be produced. Add 1 cup of fresh pomegranate arils. These provide punicolagens. They'll bind to your LDL particles, prevent oxidation, stop foam cell formation. Dress the salad with high phenolic extra virgin olive oil, 3 to 4 tablespoons. This provides oleocanthal. It'll activate ABCA1. Start extracting cholesterol from your foam cells. If you can tolerate natto, add 50 grams on the side. If not, add 3 ounces of aged Gouda cheese on top of the salad, or take an MK7 supplement with the meal. This activates MGP, stops calcification, begins reversing it. That's the meal. Simple whole foods. No processed ingredients, no pills, no powders, just food. But food chosen specifically for its bioactive compounds. Food that activates the precise pathways your body needs to reverse plaque. Now let me address the inevitable objections because I know what you're thinking. First objection: this has too much fat. Olive oil is pure fat. You're telling me to consume 4 tablespoons? That's 500 calories just from oil. Yes, it is. But those calories are not the problem. The low-fat dogma has destroyed cardiovascular health in this country. For 50 years, we've been told to avoid fat, consume more carbohydrates, more grains, more sugar. And what happened? Obesity rates skyrocketed. Diabetes rates exploded. Heart disease remained the #1 killer because fat isn't the enemy. Oxidized LDL is the enemy. Inflammation is the enemy. Dysfunctional HDL is the enemy. And low-fat diets make all of these worse. When you eliminate fat, you decrease HDL. Your good cholesterol drops. Your reverse cholesterol transport slows dramatically. You cannot extract cholesterol from foam cells anymore. Plaque grows. Low-fat diets also increase triglycerides. Your liver converts excess carbohydrates into fat molecules. Those fats get packaged into VLDL particles, very low-density lipoprotein. These particles are more likely to oxidize than LDL, more likely to cause inflammation, more likely to form plaque. And low-fat diets increase small, dense LDL, the most dangerous type, the type that penetrates the vessel wall most easily, the type that oxidizes most readily, the type that causes the most aggressive plaque. So when you consume a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, you're making your lipid profile worse, not better. But when you consume fat, specifically the right fats, olive oil, omega-3s, you improve your lipid profile dramatically. HDL increases. ABCA1 gets activated. Reverse cholesterol transport improves. Triglycerides decrease. LDL particles become larger and more buoyant, less likely to penetrate the vessel wall, less likely to oxidize. This is why the Mediterranean diet works so effectively. It's high in fat, 40% of calories from fat, but it's the right fat. Olive oil, nuts, fish, and people who follow Mediterranean dietary patterns have the lowest rates of cardiovascular disease globally, despite consuming high fat. Because it's not about the quantity of fat, it's about the quality of the fat and what it does to your metabolism. Second objection: I can't eat this every day. It's too expensive, too time-consuming. Then you're not serious about reversing your plaque. This is not a casual intervention. This is not something you do when convenient. This is medicine. If I prescribed you a medication and instructed you to take it daily, you'd take it daily without question. This meal is medicine. It activates pathways that pharmaceutical medication cannot. You consume it every day, no exceptions. Is it expensive? Yes. High-quality olive oil costs money. Pomegranates cost money. Aged cheese costs money. But how much does a heart attack cost? How much does bypass surgery cost? How much does a lifetime of disability cost? This meal costs approximately $10 to $15 per day. That's $300 to $450 per month. Bypass surgery costs a $100,000 minimum. A heart attack can cost $50,000 if you survive. And if you don't survive, your family pays the devastating price. Funeral costs, lost income, lost years together. This meal is the cheapest insurance policy you can purchase. Consume it every day. Make it absolutely non-negotiable. Is it time-consuming? It takes 10 minutes to prepare. Wash arugula. De-seed a pomegranate. Drizzle olive oil. That's it. If you don't have 10 minutes to save your life, you have fundamentally wrong priorities. Third objection: what about studies showing antioxidant supplements don't work? Correct. Antioxidant supplements don't work. Vitamin E pills, vitamin C pills, beta-carotene pills. Large clinical trials have demonstrated they don't reduce cardiovascular events. Some studies even showed they increased mortality rates. But that's not what we're discussing. We're not talking about isolated synthetic vitamins in pill form. We're talking about whole foods. Foods that contain thousands of bioactive compounds working synergistically. Pomegranates don't just contain one antioxidant. They contain dozens. Polyphenols, anthocyanins, tannins, ellagic acid. These compounds work together in complex ways. They have effects far beyond simple antioxidation. They activate genes, they modulate inflammation, they interact with gut bacteria. They influence cellular signaling. You cannot replicate that complexity with a pill. This is why food-based interventions work and supplement-based interventions fail. The compounds in whole foods are bioavailable. They're in the correct molecular form. They're delivered with cofactors that enhance absorption and activity. They're metabolized by your gut microbiome into active metabolites. A pomegranate is not a vitamin C pill. It's a molecular pharmacy. Hundreds of compounds with overlapping synergistic effects. That's why it works consistently. Fourth objection, my doctor told me to take a statin. Isn't that enough? No, absolutely not. Statins lower LDL cholesterol. They reduce the quantity of LDL in your bloodstream. This slows plaque growth. It might stabilize existing plaque, but it doesn't reverse plaque. Statins don't activate ABCA1. They don't increase reverse cholesterol transport. They don't extract cholesterol from foam cells. They don't stop calcification. They don't prevent LDL oxidation. They just lower the number on your lab report. And yes, lowering LDL is important. I'm not suggesting you stop your statin medication, but statins alone are insufficient. Thomas was on high-dose statin therapy. His LDL dropped to 70, and his calcium score still increased by 145 points because the statin wasn't addressing the underlying mechanisms. It wasn't activating reverse cholesterol transport. It wasn't stopping calcification. You need both. Statin to lower LDL,